In 2010, during their honeymoon in South Africa, a couple was approached by criminals who robbed them, kidnapped them, and the incident resulted in a fatality. Remarkably, it took the police less than 2 weeks to apprehend 5 suspects, and several security camera images captured the movements of some of them. Today's case delves into the mystery surrounding Anni and Shrien Dewani's honeymoon. Anni Hindocha was born on March 12, 1982, in Sweden. However, her parents Vinod and Neelam Hindocha are of Indian origin. She was the youngest of 3 siblings, an older sister named Ami and a brother named Anish. Anni was described as a shy but intelligent girl. She graduated in electronic engineering and secured a job at the technology company Ericsson in Stockholm, the capital of Sweden. In mid-2009, at the age of 27, Anni visited a friend in London, where she met a friend of her friend named Shrien Dewani, a 29-year-old man. Shrien was born on December 29, 1979, in Bristol, England, to parents Sneela and Prakash Dewani, who are of Indian origin and immigrated to England in the early 1970s. He graduated in economics from the University of Manchester and worked in London until 2005, until he ended up deciding to help his family manage their own network of companies based in Manchester. The Dewani family is among the wealthy families in England because Prakash, the father, is a successful pharmacist and became a millionaire when he opened a chain of nursing homes that was very successful. Before meeting Anni, Shrien was engaged to a girl called Rani Kansagra, daughter of a millionaire who financed the Indian airline SpiceJet. However, in February 2009, before meeting Anni, he abruptly cancelled the wedding plans for no apparent reason, despite protests from the bride and her family. Shrien and Anni began dating and maintained a long-distance relationship, visiting each other sporadically. In February of the following year, 2010, she decided to resign and move to England to be closer to her boyfriend. They got engaged in May of that same year. The wedding was scheduled for the end of October. However, in the 5 months leading up to the wedding, some issues in their relationship began to emerge. Shrien began to exhibit controlling behaviour, a personality that Anni was not familiar with. He began to occasionally complain about the clothes she wore and the places she liked to go out with her friends. 3 weeks before the wedding, Anni had a heated argument with her fiancé and threw her ring at him, declaring she didn't want to get married anymore. In conversation with her family, she vented her feelings, and the vast majority of them encouraged her to believe that these problems would be resolved. They emphasized that Shrien was a good catch, handsome, heir to a wealthy family, a practicing Hindu, qualities that she would hardly be able to find in anyone else. Despite these concerns, they ended up getting married on October 29, 2010, in Mumbai, India. It was a luxurious Hindu celebration for 350 guests that lasted 3 days. Anni Hindocha was now Anni Nina Dewani. Their honeymoon began on November 9th with a trip to Kruger National Park in South Africa, where they enjoyed safaris and stayed for 3 nights, and on November 12th, they arrived in Cape Town, one of South Africa's 3 capitals. From the airport, the couple took a taxi to the Cape Grace Hotel in the waterfront, a 5-star hotel strategically located between mountains and the sea. Shrien exchanged contact information with the taxi driver Zola Tongo for future trips because during their trip they talked, and this driver mentioned that he worked as a taxi driver in his spare time to make extra money. Shrien decided to help him by taking his number. Security cameras showed that on the 12th and 13th, the couple stayed at the hotel, visited the pool area, stayed in the bars and took some photos. On the 13th, Shrien called Zola asking to pick them up at 7:30 p.m, as the couple had a reservation at a restaurant called Surfside. Zola arrived more than 30 minutes late, which left the couple a bit upset. After dinner, Shrien called Zola again, who this time arrives on time and takes them back to the resort. On the way, at a traffic light, 2 armed men banged their guns on the car window. One of them got in and sat in the front passenger seat next to Zola, while the other sat in the back with the couple, who were in complete despair. The 2 were forced to lie down as the men demanded their money and the phones, initiating a kidnapping. Zola was forced to drive in the directions given by the men. The criminals repeatedly assured them that they didn't need to worry because they just wanted their personal items and the car. Nothing serious would happen to them if they collaborated. At one point, they instructed Zola to stop the car and get out. The one in the passenger seat changed seats and took over driving. Minutes later, this man stopped the car and the one behind opened the door on Shrien's side and kicked him out. With only Anni inside, the car drove away. Shrien managed to seek help from the locals and called the police. Zola had already done the same. They both ended up meeting back at the hotel with the officers and had no idea where Anni was. A police team was dispatched to search for the car. That same night, Anni's family was informed of the kidnapping, but it was Shrien's father who called her father. Shrien told his father that he was desperate and unsure of how to break the news to his father-in-law what had happened. Prakash then called Vinod and explained the robbery, the kidnapping, that while his son had been released, Anni had been taken. Half an hour later, Shrien calls his father-in-law in tears, apologizing for not being able to protect his daughter as he was entrusted to. Around 8 in the morning the following day, the car was found abandoned in an area on the outskirts of the city, and unfortunately, Anni, aged 28, was found dead inside the vehicle. The autopsy revealed that Anni was struck by a single bullet, which passed through her hand in what appeared to be an act of protection, then hit her neck and exited through the back of her head. Forensics noted that there was a hole in the back seat of the car, which indicated that the bullet was inside the vehicle, but the projectile was never found, neither in the upholstery nor the trunk. It is also worth mentioning that Anni showed no signs of physical abuse. This crime seemed a bit strange and puzzled the police because both Zola and Shrien had stated that the criminals only wanted the car and would release everyone unharmed. Yet in the end, the opposite happened. Some items were indeed taken, including a Giorgio Armani women's wristwatch, a white gold bracelet, her cell phone, her purse, but her engagement ring made of gold and diamonds, valued at £25,000, was in the car. And obviously, the car itself was left behind. A very suspicious crime, since the majority of robberies committed there do not end in a crime involving abandonment of the stolen items. Fingerprints collected from the scene led the police to a suspect, and from here begins a chain of accusations. I ask that you pay attention to where these accusations lead. The fingerprints were of a man named Zolile Mngeni. When questioned, he directly confessed to the crime, but he claimed he did not shoot Anni. Instead, he implicated an accomplice called Mziwa Madoda Kwaba. He, in turn, also admitted to the crime of robbery and kidnapping, but denied being the shooter, pointing to another accomplice, Zolila, as the one responsible. Furthermore, he added that the crime was ordered by a third person called Monde Mbolombo. The police quickly tracked down these suspects. They had luck finding them quickly, because everyone was cooperative, taking responsibility and easily identifying others involved. When the police questioned Monde, he also admitted his involvement in the crime, but clarified that his role was only to act as a bridge between the mastermind of the crime and the other two accused. Who was this mastermind? Zola Tongo, the taxi driver. It became evident that a gang of 4 had orchestrated a criminal plan that tragically ended with a fatality. When the police confronted Zola, who had previously been considered just a victim, he was already accompanied by a lawyer. Admitting his involvement, he agreed to cooperate with the investigation. His lawyer proposed a deal where he provide his account of the events in court in exchange for a lighter sentence, as he was assuming guilt and would reveal all the details of the crime, including identifying the real mastermind, the 5th conspirator, in this case Anni's husband, the victim, Shrien, and would also provide all possible evidence, thus avoiding wasting police time in resolving the case. Under South African law, this sentence reduction agreement in exchange for valid statements could only be accepted if previously authorized by the victim's family. Since Shrien was now a suspect, Anni's father was the one who had to authorize the agreement for Zola to receive a reduced sentence in exchange for his information. Zola went to court just 3 weeks after the crime, on December 7th, and what he revealed was truly shocking, and most of the information he gave could be confirmed by security cameras. Zola Robert Tongo was 31 years old at the time, and he was the father of 5 minor children who worked as a driver for a private company and supplemented his income by driving a taxi on his days off. On the afternoon of November 12th, he picked up the couple at the airport and drove them to their resort. During their ride, they chatted, and when they arrived at the hotel at 5:13 p.m., Anni got out of the car first. She went towards the reception to check in while Shrien stayed in the car for a few minutes. Unexpectedly, he asked Zola if he could help him with the following words: "Take someone out of the scene," for an amount of 15,000 rands, something around just £750. Zola interpreted this to mean that someone needed to be killed, and he responded by saying he didn't have the necessary resources, but might know someone who could help. Shrien took his phone number and said he would call later to follow up. After dropping the couple off at the hotel, Zola contacted his acquaintance, called Monde Mbolombo, 33 years old, who worked as a receptionist at another hotel at 5:42 p.m. He wanted to meet Monde in person to discuss the matter because he wanted to be sure he was talking to the right person. At the time, Monde said he wouldn't participate directly, but that he could connect Zola with someone he knew would do it. Monde's fee for arranging this was 5,000 rands, with the remaining 10,000 rands, that is a total 15,000 rands, to be paid to the actual perpetrator, Mziwa Madoda Kwaba, a 27-year-old unemployed man. Quabe accepted the proposal, but said he would not do it alone. He would need to call someone else to do this with him. Amidst the flurry of contacts, Zola realized that he would not receive any payment for himself. In the early afternoon of the following day, November 13th, Shrien contacted Zola for another ride. This time, he was alone. In the car, he asked if Zola had made the necessary contacts, and if he knew of any place where he could exchange pounds for rands without presenting his passport. Zola confirmed that the contacts were in place, but that he ended up without any payment himself. He asked if he could receive an extra fee in addition to the 15,000 that would be used, and Shrien agreed to pay 5,000 once everything was sorted out. This makes a total of 20,000 rands, which is about £850, to kill someone. On the way back to the hotel, Shrien detailed how he wanted the crime to be executed, which is a staged robbery followed by kidnapping and murder. Later that afternoon, Zola met with Kwaber and his new partner, Zolila Mngeni, a 25-year-old man. During this meeting that took place in the car, they discussed and organized the plan. Kwabe instructed that Shrien should leave the fee somewhere in his own car, so that after the action, they retrieve the money and leave. Zola relayed this information to Shrien over the phone. Zola's next personal meeting with Shrien would be at 7:30 that same evening, when he would pick up the couple at the hotel to take to the restaurant, and it would be on this route that the plan would be executed. However, due to other commitments, he was late and arrived at the hotel shortly after 8 p.m. Zola drove to the agreed location for the attack, an area in Gugulathu, but upon arriving, they realized that Kwaber and Zolile were no longer there. Zola then continued to the restaurant, disguising his intentions. Before entering, Shrien asked him what was happening and said he wanted the job to be done that night. While the couple were having dinner, Zola contacted the men, and they explained that they left the place because the car had not arrived on time. They rescheduled the plan for the same location, intending to carry out the act on the return trip. After dinner, the couple returned to the vehicle and headed back to the hotel, passing through the same region of Gugulathu. As soon as they arrived at a traffic light, the men appeared and the events unfolded as previously described, with the assault and Zola's eventual release. In his statement, he added that he knew that Kwaber and Zolila would not hurt Shrien, as he would be left at another location, and although he was not present, he acknowledged and admitted that Anni would later be murdered with a firearm. Despite this, he went to the police station and registered a police report, claiming to be a victim of the situation. The next morning, he met with Shrien at the hotel. Hours before Anni's body was found, Shrien wanted to know if the work was carried out successfully. He promised to pay Zola's share as soon as the body was found, and when he had free time since he would have to deal with the police for a few days. So 3 days later, on November 16th, Zola met Shrien at the hotel again to receive his payment. He received a plastic bag with money, but he didn't check it. He only checked it after he got home and realized there were only a few thousand rands in it. From then on, Shrien no longer answered his calls. In his affidavit, this followed sentence is found. By deposing to the false affidavits as above, I unlawfully and intentionally caused the police falsely to investigate my and Shrien Dewani's complaint of kidnapping and robbery, and to continue their investigations into the kidnapping, robbery and murder of the deceased Anni Dewani on the basis that my allegations were true, when in fact they were not. Zola's testimony was accepted by the court, and in exchange for his guilty plea, he received a reduced sentence of 18 years in prison. This marked just the first stage of the hearings. In addition to Zola's statement having visual evidence, the security cameras provided further insights into Shrien's behaviour. On Sunday, November 14th, at 9:19 a.m, he received a call from the police informing him that his wife had been found. Minutes later, he was seen crying as he walked towards his room, accompanied by some hotel staff and officers. But that same evening, at 7:37, he was caught on camera in the same hallway, leaving the room, on the phone and smiling. Shrien left the country permanently on the evening of the 16th. This development led to a branching line of investigation that involves cronies, Mondambolombo, Mziwamadoda Kwabe, Zolile Mngeni, and now primarily Shrien. Shrien had already returned to the United Kingdom, and was now being sought by the South African police. The South African authorities requested the extradition of the suspect, who had already been arrested by the British authorities, but at the time he was granted a bail of £2,000. He would soon have a pre-trial in the British court itself to decide whether he would be sent to South Africa or whether he would be tried in the UK. The case became very well known in England, and the tabloids were conducting their own private investigations and speculating versions about the motive. In February of the following year, 2011, a major revelation emerged. An intimate escort who goes by the name the German Master gave an interview to a newspaper saying that he had not just one, not two, but several intimate nights with Shrien. This man detailed their interactions, such as the roles they played when they met, exemplifying that Shrien liked to feel like a miserable, dominated pig. It was also discovered that he had a profile on a dating site aimed at gay people called Gaydar, under the nickname Asian Sub-Guy 24. Shrien denied all these accusations. After this information came to light, Anni's father, Vinod, recalled that she once told him that Shrien said did not want to have sex before marriage, which at the time the father had seen this as a sign of purity and said that she should be proud of, as this was a pure tradition of Hinduism. He had no idea that it could be a sign of something bad, but now he began to see it in a different light, feeling that things were starting to make sense. The following month, in March, Shrien appeared in British court for his extradition hearing. His lawyers reported that he was suffering from severe stress and deep depression, claiming that he was at risk of an attempt on his own life. Despite these conditions, the jury decided that he should be extradited regardless of the issues that were presented. However, Shrien appealed the decision, and in a new trial agreed to carry out the extradition only when his medical condition becomes stabilized. Meanwhile, in South Africa, the other accused were being tried. The charges included conspiracy to commit kidnapping, illegal possession of firearms, robbery, kidnapping and murder. Mond, who connected two of the accused, pleaded guilty to organizing the crime. He received full immunity from prosecution in exchange for his promise to testify truthfully against Shrien and other criminal cases related to the crime. This legal agreement would remain valid as long as everything he said was proven to be true. Quabe confirmed the organization of the crime that came at Zola's behest and detailed how they robbed the taxi driver and the couple's belongings. All of the stolen items were recovered. He confirmed that after releasing Zola, they released Shrien a few minutes later and continued with Anni. While driving, Zola shot her. They then stopped the car, retrieved the bullet from the trunk, threw the bullet into the river and fled the scene. Before concluding his statement, Quabe turned to Anni's parents and asked for forgiveness. His version was accepted by the court, and he was sentenced to 25 years in prison without the right to parole. After his arrest, Zolila was diagnosed with a brain tumour, and only after several operations he was able to appear in court, which happened in August 2012. Despite having assumed responsibility for the crime in a police statement, he was the only one who declared his innocence during the hearing, claiming that he did not participate in the crime or shoot the victim. Ultimately, he was found guilty of shooting Anni. The conclusion was reached through forensic evidence presented during the hearing. Because of this and his insistence on his innocence, he was sentenced to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. As for Shrien, the extradition process lasted for 3.5 years. until at the beginning of 2014, after numerous hearings, it was definitively decided that he should be sent to South Africa. He landed in the country on the day April 8th. Upon arrival, he was arrested and charged with 5 crimes: conspiracy to commit kidnapping, robbery with aggravating circumstances, murder, and obstruction of justice. He pleaded not guilty to all 5 charges. Anni's family consistently travelled to South Africa to attend every hearing, including those of all the accused. And it was no different in the Shrien hearings. They were particularly invested in his hearings, which they had anticipated the most. The trial began on October 6, 2014. The prosecution focused on allegations about the suspect's repressed sexuality as the main factor to accuse him, arguing that in the Hindu religion, homosexuals are not accepted and divorces are not well regarded. Shrien, in turn, responded to allegations about his sexuality. His lawyer read a letter of defense which included the following statement. "I had sexual interaction with both males and females. I consider myself bisexual. My sexual interactions with males were mostly physical experiences, or email chats with people I met online, or in clubs, including prostitutes such as Leopold Leiser. My sexual interactions with females were usually during the course of a relationship, which consisted of other activities and emotional attachment." Regarding what happened to his wife, his version was that while they were returning from the restaurant to the hotel, Anni insisted that she wanted to experience the local nightlife, and that's why they ended up arriving in places not often visited by tourists, in an area that they were unaware had high crime rate, but which Zola likely knew about. There was never any direct evidence linking Shrien to the crime. The alleged phone messages between him and Zola were not found on either device, and the audio recordings only included calls for taxi services. Zola claimed that discussions about the crime were handled in person. Defense lawyers argued that the other defendants agreed to name Shrien as the mastermind so that they could make deals and get the lowest sentence possible. They claimed that Zola's version was very strange in a situation where a random passenger could ask an unknown taxi driver to arrange a murder, and that driver would readily agree. As for the images from the cameras, the defense also addressed the footage showing Zola entering Shrien's room, acknowledging that money was exchanged. However, they argued that the payment was for taxi services, and Zola, recognizing the couple's wealth, had orchestrated the robbery himself. Finally, just 2 months after Shrien's first hearing, the judge, Jeanette Traverso, who was in charge of the case, read a statement that shook everyone who believed in the suspect's guilt, especially Anni's family.
Mr. Tongo, who was the only witness who could link the accused to the conspiracy, gave evidence to the court which is so improbable and contains so many mistakes, lies, and inconsistency that one simply cannot know where the lies end and where the truth begins. I accept that at this stage of the proceedings, the credibility of a witness plays a limited role, but in my view, the evidence of these witnesses is so replete with fundamental contradictions on the key components of the state case that I can all but ignore it. In making this finding, I take into account that all 3 witnesses, Mr. Tongo, Mr. Malombo, and Mr. Kwabe, are intelligent people and therefore more than capable of attempting to twist their version to implicate the accused. Regrettably, there are many unanswered questions about what happened on this fateful night. I realize there is strong public opinion that the accused should be placed on his defense. I take note of that. I have heard the plight of the Hindocha family, that they would like answers to the question. I have, however, taken an oath of office to uphold the rule of law and to administer justice without fear, favor, or prejudice. That I cannot do if I permit public opinion to influence my application of the law. If any court permitted public opinion or emotion to influence their judgments, it would lead to anarchy. I am obliged to follow the established legal principles regarding the discharge at the close of the state case. In the light of the analysis of the state case, there is no evidence upon which a reasonable court, acting carefully, can convict the accused, and I am, as I said, obliged to follow established legal principles regarding a discharge. The law is clear. The evidence of the accused, if he does not incriminate himself, can never strengthen the state's case. Even if the accused should enter the witness stand and is a wholly unsatisfactory witness, I will still be left with a weak state case, which cannot, on any basis, pass legal muster. In the circumstances, I make the following order. The application in terms of Section 174 of the Criminal Procedure Act is granted. The accused is found not guilty in this charge.
Thus, Shrien Dewani became free, and the case was dropped. Before Shrien's hearing began in July 2014, Solili's lawyers applied for parole due to his worsening medical condition. The tumour in his brain was getting worse and reaching a terminal state. The request was denied, and Zolili died in prison on October 18th. In mid-2015, Anni's family petitioned an English court to reopen the case so that Shrien could be investigated by the British court. However, in September, a court in Northern England considered a new trial inappropriate, given that the crime took place in another country and that the suspect in question had already been tried and found innocent there. On August 3, 2018, several newspapers published an article about Shrien, who had now publicly come out as homosexual and was happy with a new partner, Gledison Lopez Martins, a Brazilian photographer. The couple had been in a relationship since the beginning of 2017. For some time, they posted photos on social media, but information about the couple is no longer seen nowadays. From time to time, Shrien is spotted by people, alone, doing physical exercises around the city or using the subway. It appears that Shrien will no longer face any further trials, as he is officially considered innocent. To this day, Anni's family disagrees with the South African court's decision. They strongly believe that Shrien is guilty. Furthermore, there are rumours that the family also suspects that justice was bought with a lot of money by the Dewani family, but they have never come out publicly with this statement. We express our deepest sympathies to the victim's family. If you've made it this far, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to this channel. Also, add your opinion in our comments. Thank you very much. I will see you in the next case.